Hey everybody, it's GauntletX, and welcome to the Arena Open Day 2 draft number 1 for Pioneer Masters. This is going to be a best of 3 draft here where we need to win 3 out of the next 4 rounds to qualify for draft number 2. If we do that, draft number 2 is where there are cash prizes on the line up to $2,000. So, very sweet, very competitive event here. It's going to be very interesting to see how this format drafts when everyone in the draft pod's trying their absolute hardest here. They do combine the draft queues between the Arena Open players and the regular drafters, but I assume everybody playing at this exact hour, the little 2 hour time span that you hop into your Pioneer Masters Arena Open draft, the majority of the people are going to be Arena Open drafters here. So don't expect to wheel a bunch of powerful cards here. We are going to have to draft our absolute heart out, and it should be a fun time here. No matter what happens, we got through on our very first try on day 1, so we'll be up in gyms, but it would be super sweet to make it to that draft number 2 and at least get to draft this set very competitively twice today. So without further ado, let's hop into the draft and see where the cards take us today. All right, and here we are for the pack one, pick one, a very solid pack to start us off here. The Scytheclaw Raptor is what I'm going to go with. It's just a very large creature for the mana cost, and the best aggressive decks in the format are red decks at their core with excellent efficient creatures like the Scytheclaw Raptor, so I'm super happy to start with that. But we also have efficient removal with the Silk Wrap here, nice flexible card. There's also a Treasure Cruise. It's not a card I tend to take super highly because you don't want multiple copies in the same deck because the delve starts to contradict itself, where if you have multiple copies in your hand, the second copy costs a million mana because the first one exiles your whole grave. So it's a card that I really like having at least one copy of in any blue deck, but I don't think you need to take them super highly because you don't want too many more copies than just one. That's really kind of it. I mean, there's Ardenvale Tactician. It's pretty fine for any aggressive white deck, but we want to go towards aggro. I like the Scytheclaw Raptor there. For pick number 2, pretty simple follow-up. We can just take a Rimrock Knight, stick to an aggressive red deck. This has a lot of little synergy in this format that makes it really, really solid. It works with any heroic cards because Boulder Rush counts as an entire spell being targeted on your creature, and it also works with some of the green aggressive cards, mainly the Gnarlback Rhino, that lets you draw a card every time it's targeted. So Rimrock Knight, deceptively good in the format to the point where I think it's only maybe a tiny bit weaker than Fiendslayer Paladin, and if the difference in power level is pretty small, I will stick to just the first color that we started with here and not hop into a secondary. So it's Rimrock Knight, Fiend Slayer Paladin, and like Conclave Naturalists here for the best 3 cards in the pack. But Rimrock Knight is pretty equivalent with these other 2, and it's on color. So we'll take that. For pick 3, we actually have 2 excellent red spells in this pack, and I think they're some of the strongest spells in the pack, period. I mean, everything off color is really filler actually at this point for this early in the draft, so we're happy to be in red seeing this pack. The Frostburn Weird and the Witch's Mark are both excellent. The Frostburn Weird can be attacking as a 4/1 with that activated ability while also being just a really good blocker without having to spend any mana into it. It's very good if you get any devotion to red cards, which there are of course devotion cards in the format now. That is the current bonus sheet. There's also Witch's Mark, which is really excellent as card draw that also buffs your board a little bit and helps you get more damage in. It also triggers anything with heroic because you are targeting it with a spell to put a wicked roll onto it. So I really love both of these. I think I'm going to take Frostburn Weird over Witch's Mark by a tiny, tiny bit. I think that card is just really, really deceptively good. But so is Witch's Mark, so we see a Witch's Mark this pack, and we'll take that, and we're sending a very clear message to our left to stick out of red. So unless the players on our left opened up a great red rare or mythic, hopefully we're cutting them off of that color and we get to be a really aggressive red deck at the core. I would prefer to be basically anything but blue red, but I guess Frostburn Weird makes up for that a little bit. If we do end up in blue red, then this will be a little bit easier to cast and activate. But my favorite aggressive decks are Boros, number 1 by a lot. Mono Red's very high up there as well. And then Gruul is also quite good. Rakdos is solid. I think blue-red is probably the weakest color pair we could end up in here, but any color to pair with a red with this great start, just really solid creatures and a Witch's Mark would be pretty fantastic. For pick 5, we do see that Akroan Crusader. It's a solid little aggressive red card if you have a lot of heroic synergy for it. We already have 2 pieces of heroic synergies, so I think I will rock with it here. It's going to go great with the Boulder Rush and the Witch's Mark. It's just an excellent target for those cards, and it gets you getting some damage in, hitting the ground running as quickly as possible, chipping away at your opponent from turn 1, technically turn 2, because this card itself doesn't have haste, but gets a creature onto the board turn 1. So pretty happy with a Crone Crusader, but now we are taking a slight hit in power level, not taking a blue spell here. It does look like maybe we will end up in like blue-red aggro, because Cloudfin Raptor can get very large for just 1 mana. It can pretty easily become a 2/3 flyer, and with a little bit of work, a 3/4 flyer. And then Zephyr Winder is also a good cheap flyer, but again, a Crone Crusader is very solid in the red aggro decks, so we can stick to pure red still. And a pick 6 Scytheclaw Raptor, when this card is good enough that I pack one, pick one it, I'm very happy to see that and just slam it on into the deck. For pick number 7, we see a Martial Glory pick 7, which is a good sign that nobody is in Boros specifically on our right, but that does not mean that white is super open. We haven't seen a lot of excellent white spells, but we have seen some solid green ones like Avatar of the Resolute running around, so we could instead take something like Experiment 1 here that's going to get really big for just the 1 mana, or a Gnarlback Rhino here, which works great with our Witch's Mark and a Crone Crusaders. This is a little bit of a turning point for the draft. I think we've seen more green spells than white overall, so I am going to take one of these green spells over the Martial Glory, but we'll see if that comes back to haunt us here. I'm just going to grab Experiment 1 and try to go balls to the wall, just super, super high speed aggro, and get as many 1 and 2 drops as possible, although the Gnarlback Rhinos will be solid pickups later. Pick 8, here's the Dragon Mantle that works excellently in mono red or any red aggressive deck because you get your heroic trigger, draw a card, and maybe get some extra damage in later. Pretty easy pick there. Pick number 9. Not going to be a huge fan of Nemesis of Mortals when I'm not like a green-black self-mill deck. Reverent Hunter, if I'm not really deep into green, is not going to be very big either. The Devotion's going to be quite small. We can take an aspect of Hydra for heroic triggers, but I would rather just take a random mediocre red creature so we have a chance of being the pure mono red deck. If we get a really powerful Devotion payoff, like we open up a Perforos or something like that. So we'll take the Bloodfire Enforcers here. I think Labyrinth Champion is just way too overcosted for its solid heroic ability to be worth it. We could also speculate on a Syndicate Messenger there and have that Boros backup plan, as that's an okay 4-drop in Boros decks, but it doesn't really synergize at all for aggressive strategies, so I'm not super high on it. Leafground Dryad does. This is 2 mana 2/2 on curve when we need it, but it's also a heroic enabler at 4 mana. So that's excellent. Pick 11 now. Gladecover Scout. If we get really good enchantments, hexproofing, or throwing auras onto a hexproofer is a decent strategy, but there aren't a ton of like really beefy enchantments that make that super worth it. Pack is pretty weak. Honestly, I think I'm more likely to end up playing a Keening Apparition. I'm probably not going to have to pivot onto Boros here. I will probably be Gruul or Mono Red. But even if I'm Gruul, I'm just not going to play a Gladecover Scout 9 times out of 10. If I pivot onto Boros, I'll be perfectly happy to play a Keening Apparition, at the very least out of the sideboard. Oof, Archaeologist pick 13. Quite a sign for blue, but if we're blue-red, we're not going to be excited about Archaeologist. It is an excellent controlling card and not a good aggro card. So even if we do end up in blue, once again, we're just not going to play that. Last pick, Martial Glory. So nobody is in exactly Boros, but there are definitely drafters playing white, because we haven't seen a ton of good white. And our pack 2 pick 1 is a little mediocre here. We have a Witch's Mark. Hero of Lena Tower potentially becomes really, really big for just the 1 green mana card, but you do have to spend a bunch of extra mana when you heroic trigger it. It's really the Hero or the Witch's Mark. We are not going to be a splashy District Guide or Gates Ablaze kind of deck. I really think I would rather, again, just stick as deep onto red as possible and take the Witch's Mark. Plus, Hero is very, very high variance, where it's incredibly bad if you get no heroic triggers, but I guess so is a Crone Crusader, for that matter. But a Crone Crusader's in red, so gets a little upside that way. Pick 2, I think there actually is a big enough power level difference between the red cards and the green card here to actually just take the green card with the Crawl Harpooner. We have pretty much no removals. We could also end up taking a Savage Punch here, but a 2 mana 3/2 reach that also kills like a Pilgrim's Eye, little 1/1 flyer on your opponent's board when it hits the board, is just really, really good for the cost. It's certainly better than Warhound and Slide Runner, infinitely better than Emissary. The question is, do we need removal badly enough to take Savage Punch here? I guess I've got some Scytheclaw Raptors for 4 power creatures to get the buff here. I'm still just taking Harpooner, though. I think the card in a vacuum is so much stronger that we can lean that direction over the removal. And now pick 3. I can absolutely take the removal spell. Fight with Fire, 3 mana, 5 damage, unconditional. Already excellent. If you draw this when you're flooding out, you shoot your opponent for 10 and win the game on the spot. Super happy to take that, but Heart Piercing Manticore and Boundary Lands Ranger both would be excellent cards to wheel back. Pick number 4. Actually, some competition here between the Dragon Mantle and the Heart Piercer Manticore. I think both are pretty great. Doing solid on Heroic here. We've got 4 cards that trigger Heroic, and I don't have too many cards that actually have Heroic abilities at this point. It's really just an Akroan Crusader. So I think I'm higher on just taking the Manticore here over another Dragon Mantle this early. Just an excellent 4-drop, way better than the Enforcers. We can start cutting these for better cards like Heart Piercer Manticore. If the board gets cluttered up, this is a pretty good way to finish off your opponent. Slam this down, throw your Scytheclaw Raptor at your opponent, get that last 4 damage in. But you do deal the damage to any target, so you can also clear blockers out of the way. Just a very nice card. And of course, the Embalm means you get to do it twice. Pick 5. All the Witch's Marks in the draft pod, don't mind if I do. Those will be like our only heroic cards, but that's fine. I'll take that over a Crawl Harpooner by a tiny bit, just because I'm so chunked up on creatures here. I'm doing pretty good there. Pick 6. Here's Monastery Swift Spear. That's going to be pretty excellent in the deck. Solid, easy pick. Pick 7. Got a Boundary Lands Ranger. That actually works pretty great in a deck with multiple copies of Scytheclaw Raptor, so you can maybe start enabling it on turn 3. Getting that card selection out of it as quickly as possible. Pick 8. We are deep enough into red for Ash Zealot. This card is really, really strong if you can consistently cast it on turn 2. 2 mana 2/2 first strike haste is just quite the stat line. The extra ability doesn't matter much, but if you could just get that thing slamming in starting turn 2, you're in an excellent spot, and I think this deck certainly can. Pick 9. Random Boros Guildgate here, I suppose, just in case, but probably not playing any of this. I mean, we are only 3 cards into green. If we open up some incredible Boros card, we've got Martial Glory, a Piece of Fixing, and a Keening Apparition. So we just throw in that excellent Boros card, and boom, we're Boros instead of Gruul. Certainly a thing. And maybe we're mono red here to make the Ash Zealot even better. And speaking of making the Ash Zealot better, I like the Warhound here. We've got a good, decent chunk of 2-drops already, and I can take some more in the final pack. I like adding to the 3 mana plays, and bestowing this on turn 3 onto most of our 2-drops is a pretty powerful play. Put this on an Ash Zealot, we've got a 4/4 first striking attacker. Put it on a Rimrock Knight, we've got a 5/3 attacker. It's a lot of scary stuff it can do. There's another Boundary Lands Ranger. We got the Dragon Mantle all the way back. All of the scooping up every single red card possible pack 1 really paid off here, and it seems there are very few other drafters in red. It's probably 1, maybe 2 of them. And they're just taking the good removal spells for more controlling decks. That's really all that we haven't seen in red is the burn. We found 1 Fight with Fire. But yeah, at this point, like, we are kind of set to go the full mono-colored and have an incredibly consistent mana base, especially getting that Ash Zealot down turn 2 very easily. And there's a finisher for us, Chandra Flamecaller. We ever make it to 6 mana, probably win the game with this card. It's actually not insanely good in aggro. You just make the elementals and try to kill your opponent with those, but the -X is not very exciting. I still think this has got to be strong enough to take over Wild Slash a tiny, tiny bit. We're going to cast Wild Slash literally every game we draw it, though, which is pretty excellent. This is a hard choice here, actually. I mean, I feel like this is just the auto win anytime we hit 6 mana. Because even if the 2/3 ones don't immediately kill our opponent, because we're such an aggressive deck, by the time we hit 6 mana, our hand's going to be completely empty. So the 0 mana is just full-on card draw. That's going to work better for us. I feel like the double 3 one's probably pretty good. If we're behind, we can wipe our opponent's board. All right, a Crow and Crusader here for pick 2. This is definitely a deck that probably wants maybe 15 lands in it. Start cutting some Bloodfire Enforcers when we get more playables. The Crow and Crusaders look really nice in here now that we have double Dragon Mantle, triple Witch's Mark, and a Rimrock Knight. Pack 3, pick 3. Now I can take a Wild Slash over an Incredible Bomb because I think that we are definitely in a great enough spot to just be mono red rather than Gruul here trying to get Xenaghost nonsense going. Very strong card, but I can really use more burn. And I've kind of already spent my one option, my one chance to pass up on the burn on the Chandra instead. Pick 4, easy Wild Slash. Still much more interested in burn than anything else here. We've got all the creatures we possibly need. We can make them a little bit better by playing like another Boundary Lands Ranger over another Bloodfire Enforcers or a Gore Clan Rampager and playing a little bit of green or something, but we make our spells way better by taking another Wild Slash. But yeah, there's so many options here. Wild Slash is just simply the best. Here's a Frostburn Weird. When we're mono red, this card is fantastic, and we're going to take it over the 5-drop card that usually just gets played and then dies before it does anything. It's a lot of mana investment on that. Pick 6, Slide Runner or another Witch's Mark. Creature count 18 here, but we're going to cut some Bloodfire Enforcers. This is 15 lands if I cut 2 of those. Creature count's now 16. What would I cut for a Slide Runner? Right, it's like, what would I cut for a 4th Witch's Mark and what would I cut for a 2nd Slide Runner? And either way, I just don't know. I guess I'll take another Witch's Mark here, but I don't think I'm going to play a 4th Witch's Mark, and I don't think I'm going to play a 2nd Slide Runner. So it's a little awkward of a pick. Gearcrafter or Manticore I will certainly play. I actually really like the Gearcrafter in our double Dragon Mantle deck. Being able to suit up that flying token has played really well, because then you trade this off on blocks, and then you still have that really important flying threat to get damage in with. Scab Clan Berserker, generally kind of mediocre. Probably just going to start it in the sideboard, but we're definitely not playing 5 copies of Bloodfire Enforcers, so we'll put that in the sideboard. Maybe in the right matchup, that'll be pretty appealing. And oh my god, we actually drafted this perfectly. Objectively perfectly. No one can say I didn't draft the best deck in the pod. Stop commenting. We've got a Wild Slash here. That's obviously sarcasm. There were probably some picks here that 100% could be different. There's arguments for drafting this differently. I just think it's funny that we wheeled the Wild Slash, so we got both of the incredible red cards out of that. That pick 100% worked as well as absolutely possible. I don't think I can play Coordinated Slash when I've got like all these marks and mantles and stuff to play instead. Do I really want a 3rd Ranger? I don't think I want a 3rd Mantle, but I mean, I don't really want either. I definitely don't want a Stone Shock Giant, though. So I'll just grab that. Here's another Crusader. I mean, if I play 3 Crusaders, I get the Slide Runner back, too. All right, pack 3 was free. Pack 3, they were just like, all right, here's every red card. We give up. Gauntlet's in the draft pod, scooping up all the red again. Like an absolute imbecile. Yep, that's me. How's it going? Sorry, anyone who wanted to play red. Oh, boy. So we got to cut some cards here. Certainly starting with a couple mountains. Probably just cut every Bloodfire Enforcers, honestly. I have 3 instants in the whole deck. I will be running all 3 Wild Slashes no matter what. But only 3 instants, yeah. This needs an instant and Sorcery Engrave to be any good at all, and even then it's just fine. I like the triple Dragon Mantle and the quadruple Witch's Mark drawing us extra cards, so that we dig a little bit deeper through our deck, see a little bit more lands on average. Maybe they're good enough to go 14 lands here. Probably not quite. I could see the argument, though. What do we do, like 2 copies, 3 copies? That could be the play. 17 creatures. Triple Crusader does feel like quite a lot. And then maybe some 2-drops get cut here. Probably just the ones that hit the least, which are the Boundary Lands Rangers. I mean, if we've got like 4 Witches Marks here, drawing cards, the Boundary Lands Rangers are less necessary. I think they do play fine. Like we've got, I guess we only have 3 natural 4-power creatures. That's not particularly good, but we have a lot of like Dragon Mantle, Frostburn, weird activated abilities, maybe Bestows that could make a 4-power creature another way. But yeah, I mean, with like 4 Witches Marks, or even 3 if I cut one of these, we've got card draw kind of hooked up for us already. This is 17 creatures, though. Like, 15 to 17 for a pretty aggressive deck. I don't want to cut too many of these. Maybe I just cut like 1 and 1 here, and then we could go 1 and 1 here as well. That seems fine. Those would be the last 4 cuts. 1 Crusader, 1 Ranger, 1 Mantle, 1 Witch's Mark. I'm really tempted to cut another land. That feels greedy, but... I mean, if I cut our only 6-drop, feels pretty safe to cut another land. But then we don't have a Chandra in here. Maybe Chandra is just like a good sideboard tool for matchups where our opponent has like 3 copies of Gates Ablaze or something, and we need some kind of persistent finisher. So I feel like those are going to be our worst matchups. Anybody with Gates Ablaze that has just a full-on board wipe is going to be miserable. Luckily, this format only really has one full-on board wipe, and that is Gates Ablaze. But yeah, if we play against like a triple Gates Ablaze deck or something, we can utilize Chandra, Furious Rise, and like the Enforcers, and maybe some of the green spells for a little bit more resiliency and larger creatures generally. I don't know, Furious Rise still feels like it's not going to be super consistent, but there's stuff we can do to try to be better in that matchup. I don't hate the idea of using Flamecaller as a sideboard tool, but I just feel like she's strong enough to go 15 land and a Flamecaller over 14 land and some other nonsense. It's probably really the one aspect that I'm not as confident of here. I'm very happy with how this draft ended up, but the deck building here, don't know if it's better to just cut the Flamecaller and go even lower on lands here, or keep it in and just play a little less of these cards we have a million copies of. But I'm going to keep it in and do this for the deck. And this feels like a very, very solid starting point. We've got some flexibility because we have so many copies of a lot of these cards to move things around as the games and rounds progress based on what has been playing the best for us. But I am super excited with this really aggressive red deck to just hop into the Arena Open draft number 1 and see how far we can take it. All right, here we are for game 1 of round 1 against Channel Fireball. I'm hoping that that isn't actually Channel Fireball, because if it is probably a pro player. They have a lot of pro players working for them, but we'll see. Cartel Aristocrat starts it off from our opponent on Orzhov here. We are going to lead with our Ash Zealot and get some damage in here. Orzhov could be a little bit of an annoying matchup for us. It is an Aristocrats-style deck named after cards like Cartel Aristocrat. Cards that are really good at sacrificing stuff, which means they're probably playing a lot of token producers and the like as well. Let's see what instant they have up here. Stasis Snare to exile the Ash Zealot, fair enough. Here is the Scytheclaw Raptor then. Now, if they have the removal for this, it'll have to be cast at sorcery speed to prevent the 4 damage to their face. Ooh, Esper control. There's the ultimate price. Yeah, this could be awkward. It's going to be rough if they just have a ton of efficient removal throughout the game here. Probably Boundary Lands Ranger. Witch's Mark onto it, discarding the Warhound. Now there is an argument for not targeting your creature with your Witch's Mark when you're worried your opponent has instant speed removal, because if they have instant speed removal, they get to counter the entirety of Witch's Mark by killing whatever creature you target with it. But because we're playing on Arena, we can get a bit cheaty face with it, where I cast the Ranger, Arena doesn't hold for them at all, and I'm like, okay, it does not seem like they have any instance, I can target my thing, get the extra damage in. It is also worth noting, with these rolls, you can only have one roll on a creature at a time, so these future Witch's Marks are not going to be targeting Boundary Lands Ranger, or we're just going to be pinging them for one. We're not going to make the Ranger any bigger that way. Okay. Well, now they have a million mana up. They definitely have an instance. I would like to just Witch's Mark without targeting a creature then, so I'm going to do it before Rimrock Knight. And we're not going to target a creature because we don't want this to get countered by a removal spell. I could absolutely play Rimrock Knight and try to put the Wicked Roll onto it, but then the card draw might not resolve. Okay. Not exactly what I wanted to see. Let's just get the Rimrock Knight onto the board. Our opponent's got a million mana open here. Yes, I am potentially missing out on 2 Boulder Rush damage, but there's also the risk, very similar to the risk with Witch's Mark, of if I Boulder Rush one of my creatures to try to get 2 extra points of damage in, and then they kill that creature in response, my Rimrock Knight goes to the grave. I can't even cast the Rimrock Knight later, so it has very similar issues against instant speed removal. Speaking of, I should probably be writing down their instance for future games, as this is a very competitive event with potential cash on the line. So Ultimate Price, Stasis Snare, and Thunderclap Wyvern are the instants we've seen from our opponents. Cartel Aristocrat is the sorcery. Scooch this all around a little bit so I can see it all. Okay. Triplicate Spirits. Ooh, that's rough with the Wyvern. At least they are tapped out here, so we can blow up the Wyvern with Fight with Fire. They can respond by giving Cartel Aristocrats protection from red for the turn, but that doesn't really matter. I guess I could Wild Slash the Aristocrat. I'll just do that on a future turn. So Wild Slash stops damage from being prevented if you have a power 4 or greater creature. I guess it still can't target a creature with protection from red. Yeah, so that would be like if they attack in, we block and then Wild Slash their face, prevent the damage. That would work if we have a 4-power creature on board. Okay, so while they're tapped out, let's Witch's Mark first on the Rimrock Knight. Make it a considerably better attacker. And ditch this land. Great draws. Now we want to Fight with Fire the Wyvern before they can do any blocks. So they have to lose 2 flyers to kill Rimrock Knights. I'll not ditch a card here. I guess with multiple copies of Wild Slash, I want to hold off. Yeah, Rimrock Knight just trades into 2/3 of the Triplicate Spirits. Probably not worth the attack. Until I have my tricks up. When I have multiple tricks, because also, if they don't want to trade their flyers all off into the Boundary Lands Ranger here, then it sticks around to get rid of any future land draws as well. With Rimrock Knight, or with Frostburn Weird if Rimrock Knight dies. Whenever we've got extra mana, make the Frostburn Weird a 4/1 before combat. to trigger our discard plus draw. Man, yeah, Triplicate Spirits is excellent in their deck. Very, very synergistic deck over there. Because it works fantastically with the Thunderclap Wyvern, of course, making 6 power of flyers alongside that card, but it also works great with Cartel Aristocrat, because they've got a million tokens towards this card now. Just being an insane blocker. Now, we're a triple Wild Slash deck, so our deck plays really well against protection. Not perfectly, we can't target the Aristocrat with anything red, but we can make sure that damage can't be prevented, and our red creatures actually still trade into it in response, which is pretty good. Oh, God, no. Whip of Erebos is probably the worst thing we could possibly see. Give their whole board lifelink. That is horrific. And they can reanimate a Thunderclap Wyvern and gain 1,000,000 in the sky with all these flying tokens. I'm not sure we're going to be able to win any game where they draw the Whip of Erebos. We're going to have to dodge that game 2 and 3. Like, I just don't think Mono Red has a way to beat... Oops, my whole board has lifelink. That is terribad. Okay. So next turn they have 6, 7, 8 lifelink, all in the sky. I don't see a world in which we outrace this. I can Wild Slash away one of the flyers here after they block, and that should be decent. Just go to combat, discard, probably Slide Runner to draw a card. See what's up here. Dig towards something potentially insane. Scythecar Raptor's not bad. So here they're going to block Rimrock Knight, sack a flyer, and then I get to kill another flyer, kill the Aristocrat and the flying token. Okay, well this went about as good as it can here. Oh, right, they can sack it in response so Wild Slash doesn't resolve. But then they do still lose the flyer either way. Okay, double Wild Slash here does make this interesting. They're going to let it happen. Okay, they want to keep the flyer. They're going to let it happen, sure. They've got the Whip of Erebos. Return a creature from your grave to the battlefield, give it haste. Exile in the end step. They pick up a Thunderclap Wyvern. If I don't Wild Slash the final flyer right now, I have to shoot myself for 4 to kill it if I'm killing it on their attack. It's probably better to save a Wild Slash. Let them gain 4 here. So if they try to do any Aristocrat shenanigans, we stop it. Maybe the play was actually just Frostburn weird, hold up Wild Slash so they don't have to shoot myself if Slash was the better play here. It's a lot of lifelink over there. I am not very into this matchup right now. That's a lot of lifelink over there. Boundary Lands Ranger really showing off its worth here. Yeah, that War Oracle is rough. Trade off and just get reanimated for a 3 life swing again if they want. I think I need to keep Boundary Lands Ranger pretty badly. You know what's kind of wild? I don't know if red has any ways to blow up artifacts in this format. It usually has a few. But I'm trying to jog my head. I'm like, I don't remember any particularly playable ways to blow up artifacts in red. There's probably like one, but just like, it's not good. I think we have to hold slash here as an emergency button for anything better. Like that. That is a really good slash target in comparison. The cruelty plus extort. That's rough. And then the whip just takes this absolutely over. Oh man. Yep. I'm gonna get whipped. Well, I think we did about everything we could there. I think that's about as well as this game could have been played out, where the Wild Slash did end up getting a much more important target of the Basilica Shrieker instead of the 1/1 flyer. But now we just died a Whip of Erebos. We had a million different lines we could have chosen earlier in the game, so that's where things could have maybe been a bit different. But Whip of Erebos is going to be straight unbeatable. 4 mono red, as we said, when it hit the board. I'll have to look through the sideboard and really make sure there's not any way to blow up artifacts that we've drafted, but I'm fairly confident there's none that we drafted, and if there are any in the set, there's very few. Alright, that's game. They just kill us in the sky here. So I guess technically if I held Frostburn Weird back, we would have gotten another turn, because then they'd go for the Wyvern there and then get all that damage in the sky, and then they wouldn't have a flying option. No, they'd still have the Screecher for the turn after that, but it would have taken one more turn to kill us. Alright, well, Berserker seems fine, especially when we're going to be on the play here. Yeah, I mean, that Whip of Erebos is just, that is the one problem. Without the whip, I think we win that game easily and probably have a really solid chance in this matchup. I did end the game with 6 mana to where I could Chandra them, but even if I drew Chandra, we would still lose to Whip of Erebos there. So I'm thinking maybe cut a Chandra and a land here. Try to just get underneath everything. It's probably not fair, because any game where they don't have the whip, if they just play a bunch of 1-for-1 removal, Chandra's still going to be a really good way to have some grind against a slower deck like that. They have so much targeted removal, the Dragon Mantles are a little bit weaker. So maybe cut a Mantle for Berserker. Warhound didn't seem that exciting either. Like the Ranger grinding out the long game. That played really well for us. I'll play another Ranger over a Warhound. And then cut a Dragon Mantle for this Scab Clan Berserker. I think that's reasonable. Yeah, let's get in there. Fingers crossed we dodge that Whip of Erebos. Alright, here we are on the play for game 2, and we're just going to get rolling. Evolving Wilds is the turn 1 play from our opponent. And we follow up with our Boundary Lands Ranger. blue and white on board. There's the Swift Reckoning on the Swift Spear. Very flavorful. Boundary Lands Rangers, of course, looking much weaker this game. We don't have any 4-power creatures this time. Or ways to make them. I did cut one Dragon Mantle. That actually makes the Ranger a little worse. Tiny bit less consistent. They've got the full Esper now, black, white, and blue. Cartel Aristocrat is the play with nothing to sack. There's a Heart Piercer Manticore for the draw. Let's just slash that here to get the whole team in instead of hitting for 1 less damage. And we don't have a 4-power creature to do the prevent damage trick. Or the can't prevent damage trick. Basilica Screecher. Slash in the end step. Force them to cast their spell right now if they want to extort it. They do not, and that also makes sure we have all the mana open to play the Manticore this turn. They could have Ultimate Price here, out of the cards that we know of, in which case they Ultimate Price a 2/2. Yep. Plays nicely for us, because we're about to slam down a bigger, scarier creature. No Enter the Battlefield trigger here, but still worth getting this on board against an opponent at 8 life. And then if they don't hit their lifelinking Whip or their lifelinking Renown creature, then Manticore's Embalm ability becomes pretty threatening as well, so they just cruelty that immediately. That's fair enough. There's the land we could have ditched if we still had the 4-power creature, but they crueltied it. There's a first striking blocker, but there's a fight with fire for the blocker. Put them to 2 life now. They are dead if we top deck our 3rd Wild Slash. Or probably like any haste creature. We've got a couple, Ash Zealot and the Scab Clan Thingamabob. There's the Silk Wrap for Boundary Lands Ranger. Man. We also have 3 Witch's Marks that would be lethal here, a Dragon Mantle that's lethal. So many lethal top decks there. And if they don't... okay, now we have significantly less lethal top decks. Oh, 1 turn. 1 turn away, and they find the lifelinker. We run it out here, because if we draw a Witch's Mark, we're going to need all the mana we can get. We're going to spend 2 on the Witch's Mark and need the rest of our mana untapped to cast whatever other spells we draw into. So while it does have haste, so I could try to, like, surprise haste, it's better to just play it right now when 3 of our best top decks are card draw spells where we want the rest of our mana untapped instead of having to spend more mana on the Berserker in the same turn that we Witch's Mark. Here we go, Renowned War Oracle. Could have tried the double block, but then any instant speed removal spell kills my whole board and still has them game 3. So that feels like a really bad idea against a Esper control deck where we know they have at least 2 non-land cards in hand, because their deck does not have any reason to hold lands in hand. And they have not played a land every single turn. So if just one of those is like an Ultimate Price or something, it's a horrible block. Oh boy. Well, it's pretty tragic, because I don't think that there was anything in our power that resulted in this. We just got a little unlucky here, with obviously the Whip of Erebos being straight up unbeatable for mono red in game 1, and then this game, we had so many outs to kill them, like 2 or 3 turns in a row, and just found lands on those most pivotal turns. At this point, even if we do kill the War Oracle, they're at 8. Our list of outs is basically like just Chandra at this point. And at least we'll have them prove it. Yep. They just had the instant speed removal the whole time. For the War Oracle play. And we only have lands. Tragic ending to round 1 here. One was brutal. There's the Thunderclap Wyvern with all the flyers too. Why not? Just hit all their best combos both games. The only thing they really missed this time was the whip. They still had the Wyvern with Triplicate Spirits and the War Oracle against Mono Red. Devastating game, but we started off 0-1 heading into round 2. Does not feel like there was much we could do there. Just the way the cookie crumbles. All right, here we are for round 2 on the play. It's actually a pretty awkward opener. No creatures till turn 4. If I draw one, it's really good, and Wild Slashes early are great if we're in an aggro mirror. I'm going to keep this here. And hope for the best. Black deck from our opponents. Nothing relevant for our first draw. I mean, it helps us cast Manticore, but it's not a 1 or 2 mana creature. Uh-oh. Land. Land 5 being very, very redundant here. Predation for our 1 card that costs more than 3. Now we really need to just hit any creatures as our draws. We've got like 15 in the deck. That is not a creature. But it is card draw. Wow. All right. This might be a quick arena open because we do need to win 3 of these rounds. So I cannot lose 1 more round or we're out of it. And we're playing against Rakdos, so they probably have the cheap removal for the Swift Spear here. Like an Obnixlus's Cruelty or something. That means trying to Dragon Mantle it, especially when we have a revealed Dragon Mantle, is very risky. Yeah, they clearly have instant speed removal to counter Dragon Mantle here. 4 mana up and an instant. They could be playing in full control mode to bluff here, but the odds of them having nothing to do for 4 mana, like not at least like play a creature during their turn, is so low that they must be holding up a instant speed removal spell here. So we pass. Not in the market of getting 2 for 1 right now. So the other awkward part about this predation is like not only did it get rid of our best play, but it's very awkward to have the Dragon Mantle revealed against a deck, a color pair that has tons of instant speed removal. Okay, Draconic Roar for 3 damage. I can Wild Slash them twice, and that forces them to cast 2 removal spells here, but that's a 2 for 3. They cast 2 removal spells to kill Swift Spear and both my slashes. I do feel like I'm in a position where I really need to get rid of more of their removal, though, so that I have a chance of actually resolving these Dragon Mantles and drawing into other stuff. Oh, and they don't have the 2 removal spells, okay. So we just get rid of the Draconic Roar then, and that's it for now. Gear per Gear Crafter, sure. They only have 2 mana up. They had another 2 mana instant speed removal spell. They could have killed the Swift Spear with it last turn, and instead they just passed very quickly. So now I probably try to Dragon Mantle, because unless they top decked another Draconic Roar kind of removal spell, we can start drawing the cards off the mantles. Rimrock Knight. See if they have the 2 mana removal first. They do not. So Swift Spear resolves. There we go. And now we are fighting with fire here. We are going so ham. I'd rather try to have Boulder Rush eat their whole board than Dragon Mantle pre-combat for 1 more damage. Ooh, do we get to do the thing? No. It's looking like a double block on Swift Spear, but they decide against that. So I think we just play another Dragon Mantle then, so that we have Fire Breathing on our first striker, because that is a pretty excellent play to be able to Fire Breathe. And of course, drawing another card is very relevant. Cool, cool stuff. Scary board now. If I somehow flood out astronomically, and we're not dead yet, but I have like 12 mana, then I guess I could pump 1,000,000 into a Dragon Mantle and then Manticore after I've super buffed, but that seems insanely unlikely. Alright, there's the Boulder Salvo on the Ash Zealot. Pretty excellent, getting rid of that first striker. Okay, and Nantuko Husk. Nantuko Husk can definitely kill our Swift Spear, because they can just sack a 1/1 flyer and make it a 4/4. But I've got the Fire Breathing to make it trade no matter what. So I believe the play is to attack in. If they block with Gearcrafter, then we can Boulder Rush. If they block with Husk, then we just buff it naturally. If they don't block, I think I just spend all my mana on damage to their face, including the Boulder Rush, because then just like resolving a Manticore kills them. Okay. I can force them to sacrifice something with Boulder Rush here, and then still kill the Nantuko Husk. That's probably worth it. Kill Nantuko Husk and another one of their creatures. I love it. Very nice visuals, Arena. I can definitely tell what's going on. So now we kill Husk and the Flyer. That's a fine deal. Cool. Here's the Rimrock Knight. It's a pretty excellent card to sack to Manticore, actually. I played the land pre-combat there to have maximum Fire Breathing, but I guess that does mean if I don't draw land for Slide Runner next turn, I don't get to buff that. Whereas I could have kept the land and then went land Manticore next turn, had a buffed Slide Runner and cast Manticore. A little argument that way. Ooh. Alright, that's pretty nasty. Supernatural Stamina Slumgar Butcher. Probably keep mind of the Supernatural Stamina. Gear per Gearcrafter is kind of an issue for an aggro deck. The 2 bodies off 1 card, just in general, but especially with the Supernatural Stamina Slumgar Butcher combo. That's particularly gross. Okay, they are out of cards, at least. I can have Manticore use our Rimrock Knight, force the trade into the 3/3, so they have to double block Manticore with the other 2 cards to kill it. So we're in a top deck war that's pretty even, probably a 50-50 here. They get the first draw of the game, but the board state is exactly even, and because we're an aggro deck and they're at 10, I think it balances out to being pretty much a 50-50 shot at victory. Whoever draws better is going to win. Because they're definitely under more pressure to draw well faster than we are. There goes this Arena Open. We don't know yet. We've got a lot of insane draws. Trade into the 5/4 flyers, pretty good. Now I've got essentially a 4/1 with Frostburn Weird. This may be the arena open of me just eating my words. But that Swift Warkite to start off the top deck war was filthy. Witch's Mark to start it off for us is not quite as good, but was pretty solid. Oh, we've got a Chandra in this deck. That's our best draw. Yeah.
I can burn you to cinders, ashes, or the ground.
Just eat my words into World's Happiest Player. Could have went land and attacked with Frostburn Weird as well here. But then they just block with Nantuko Husk and my Weird trades into Gearcrafter or the Flyer. So it doesn't seem particularly good. It is an option though. I'm just going to hold the land so that we've got the option of like discard draw 2 instead of discard draw 1. Man. They go down to 3 as the choice here. Sack the Flyer pre-combat. They got their own Heart Piercer Manticore or something? Follow the Hammer is the thing, sure. Plus Wild Slash so that they can kill the Chandra and be at 3. Yep, it's pretty good.
I'm running on fumes.
That's pretty bad. Still just hold one land at a time, because we do have the 9 mana Fight with Fire win condition we can draw into. As far as I remember. Yeah, we haven't fought with fire this game. And Tuco Husk is essentially a 6/6 now, but that would mean Raptor killed both Berserker and Gearcrafter. Alright, wipe the rest of their board. Nope, just those two keep the Berserker. Hello there. Force Trump. Final draw step for our opponent. Swift Spear, Force Trumper. It feels greedy to give them another turn. I'm just going to shoot them for 10. I was considering just passing, because I'm like, the odds of them having anything that's going to save them here are so low, but there could be some creature that like enters the battlefield and forces me to discard a card. The 4-mana 1/3 at common in this format enters. You look at 2 of your opponent's cards, make them discard 1. They could make me discard Fight with Fire with that, and then have the Chumper for Raptor. And then if they drew way better than me from that point on, they could win the game because of that choice to not fight with fire. So 9 times out of 10, if I don't fight with fire then they don't know I have a fight with fire in my deck and I still win the game. But it's just not worth the risk. The value of them knowing I have a fight with fire is pretty low. All right, that was insanely close. Looks kind of like an aggro mirror, but they have a little bit more top end, mid rangey sacrifice nonsense. That's pretty good. We saw a wild slash from them as well. Fight with fire. So we know we're on the draw now. So I know I get to see 8 cards on my first turn, which makes me a little more free to like cut a land for something on the draw. Could do that. Don't think we have anything that is specifically great in this matchup. I think the deck just already looks pretty solid here. Scabpen Berserker is definitely weaker on the draw, so I'm not going to sideboard that in. It would be like another Boundary Lands Ranger or Witch's Mark over a land, just another card draw thing over a land. Don't think this is an incredible Dragon Mantle matchup. They've got a lot of blockers and cheap removal. I think I'm just gonna run it back. I really liked the 6 mana Chandra. Getting up to that. Well, you know what? No, I'll cut a land for Witch's Mark. We did kind of flood and tell the Chandra. Except that I did 9 mana with fire, but I could have killed him just by doing the 3 mana part to kill the blocker and then attack. Okay, this is fine. Especially since we cut a land here. It makes me feel a little safer to keep a 4-lander like this. Now that I know there's slightly less mana. Just almost as little mana as we could put in here and still be confident. Did immediately draw another land, but that's okay. That just means the odds of drawing future lands is now getting very, very low, right? We've got more than a third of our lands already. Hey, Witch's Mark. Honestly, mana efficiency, we just do this immediately. Dig through the land clump. Beautiful draws. The Boundary Lands Ranger giving us some more card filtering to get out of the lands, or get through the lands. See if they have a supernatural stamina here. It's not a bad trade. It's a 1-for-1 trade and they don't get to extort it. Just gonna let that happen. It doesn't functionally really do anything here. Because I still just slash this creature next turn. It's better to play the Ranger than another slash right now. Get the 2-drop creature down. Like, if I didn't have a Boundary Lands Ranger in my hand, I 100% would not have shot this creature there. Because it's definitely better to play a creature than kill the 1/2. Is this Magical Christmas Land hand here? We about to just die to one creature? Probably not. Double Scytheclaw Raptor is a lot of pressure. They're going to need a lot more to back it up than they've currently cast. They still need 2 more removal spells, and they only had 1 card in hand before this turn started. So unless it's removal in hand, draw another removal spell. Scytheclaw Raptor can work pretty hard to outrace here. Ooh. And I can also double Wild Slash this creature, but then they still have the 2/2 thing out that has to attack each turn. If they cast anything right now, they take 4 for doing it. But they still will. Alright, fair enough. Get rid of the Zealot. Play another Raptor. We have 12 damage right now with double Raptor. And double slash. Ooh, a Delve card is Tassiger or something? Gurmag Angler. That's not good. That's quite bad. Play a Raptor and a Wild Slash on the Angler. Put them to 10. Take 3 on the Crackback. If they're at 10, I go to 6. Almost, it just feels safer to just slash the Screecher out of here, and then I get to block the 2-2 thing with my 4-3 and kill that as well. Angler can get blocked by Crusader plus Raptor. It's going to be another top deck war. It looks like either way I play it out. This one feels slightly safer. Obviously, if they like immediately draw a Supernatural Stamina or something, that's going to be rough on the block against the Warhound. But we'll see. Actually, even if they draw Supernatural Stamina, they probably use it on Angler instead. Angler's pretty good against us. Beefy creatures are kind of hard for us to kill. We've got the 1 removal spell that does 5. Alright, awesome. Awesome work on the Warhound kill. They top decked a land. We top deck a Warhound. Still means only 5 toughness total. But it's big enough to 1-for-1 trade into Angler, so it still kind of forces the trade there, and then I have a 4-3, a 2-2, and a 1-1 when they're in top deck mode. If I attack with everybody here, they could just kill a Scytheclaw Raptor super freely, so I'm not going to do that. I could attack with Crusader, maybe, and then they might still block the Scytheclaw Raptor, but obviously they chose not to block the Raptor at all, so if I attacked with Crusader, they just eat it for free as well. So yeah, that looked like the best attack we had based on how they played. Ooh, Heart Piercer Manticore. That's like almost 100% chance they're dead after I attack all here. Because even if they have instant speed removal, they can't cast it. They would have had to play it during their turn. Or our Scytheclaw Raptor's ability kills them. And here's Heart Piercer Manticore. Alright. Things were looking very rocky at the start of game 1 there, but we managed to pull out the victory there. A 2-0 win for round number 2. And that is going to mean 1-1 so far. We are still in this event. We just got to win both of the next 2 rounds to try to make it to draft number 2. All right, here we are now for round 3. Got a Slide Runner to throw a Dragon Mantle onto. We'll keep it. Wild Slash for the cheap removal. Playing against something probably multicolory, splashery when they start with Evolving Wilds. Blue-black again. There's the Undead Butler. To mill 3 and pick up a creature when it dies, but they mill 3 lands, so it doesn't do anything when it dies. If I kill it right now, it kind of feels like decent value to just kill it before it can do anything off the death trigger. So I'm going to go for the slash and make a 1-1 haste here, rather than playing a Slide Runner. Stuck on 2 lands over there. I do love to see that. It's going to be helpful. Playing our beefiest attacker, our 3-2 Trampler over our 2-2. It's a Baleful Eidolon. 1-1 Death Touch, not that great against this board. It trades into a Crone Crusader, I suppose. I could fight it with fire. But I think I'm perfectly happy to trade here and save Fight with Fire for something better. Still have 6 damage on the board next turn. Yeah, hit for 6, they play a blocker, I kill it, hit for 6, and that's game. There's the concession from opponent. They don't even need to play it out from there. We get a pretty free victory for game 1 of round number 3. Didn't get to see a lot about their deck, but we know that they're blue-black, so they are likely quite controlling. Love seeing Baleful Eidolon. I think that card's going to be really bad against us, because it's going to trade into a 1-1 or a 2-1 or a Wild Slash. But that's all we saw, literally Undead Butler, Baleful Eidolon, so I don't think it's a ton to go on, but we know they're going to be something more controlling, so we could sideboard for a more controlling game, or like Berserker could maybe play well, but again, on the draw, it's way worse, so I'm not that pumped about it. I'm pretty happy with the way we've set up our main deck to just run it back here for now. I think the Chandra will be really good if they manage to stabilize, be a huge, scary threat in the late game. We'll see. There is a chance the Chandra could be a little bad here, because she can be countered, so if they're running all of the counter spells that can counter any kind of card, then it could be bad, but the common counter spell in this format, the good counter spell, is counter target creature spell only, so it can't even hit planeswalkers. The good counter spells for countering non-creature spells are all uncommon, so they are considerably less likely. And again, that's part of the whole bonus sheets changing that makes it that way. The Devotion bonus sheet doesn't have any counter spells, but the Spells bonus sheet did have a common blue counter spell. That would have been pretty good. Okay, this is a really risky keep. Obviously, if I top deck a mountain, kind of spicy, Ash Zealot, and then just throw some nonsense on it. But 1 removal spell still makes it super risky unless I hit 2 mountains as my first 2 draws. So I think we have to just mulligan the 1-lander, unless it had like a 1-drop creature. If it had a Crowan Crusader, then we know that we can cycle the Dragon Mantles if they don't play like a 2-mana removal spell on it. Because I just go a Crowan Crusader, go to my next turn, Dragon Mantle the Crusader, just trying to draw lands, but I can't do that here because I have no 1-drop to put the mantles on to have to wait till I hit land 2 to even try to get more lands. This is much more reasonable, and everything costs 2 or less, so I'm actually going to ditch a land on this one. Probably start with Slide Runner if I draw any lands. We did draw land, so we can go Slide Runner, land, send in a 3-2 trample. Love to see our opponent tap out a removal. There's no 1 black mana instant speed removal spell, so I know I can Witch's Mark it up. And then also play a land, and it's going to be too high toughness to stop here. Oh, I guess I do have an awkward choice of what to discard. Frostburn weird, because then I'm only 1 mana away from the Heartpiercer Manticore for next turn. Yeah, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Plus the Swift Spear draw. I am not trading Swift Spear into Halo Scarab. Am I casting Swift Spear? Or am I holding up Wild Slash? I know I'm going to play Heartpiercer Manticore next turn. Very, very likely. Swift Spear, it's not going to get any buffs if I do that, so it's not going to get prowess and get any attacks in anyway. I guess I hold up Wild Slash. And if they don't play anything else, we can just slash the Scarab in their end step. Because if I play Swift Spear now, it's not going to attack next turn anyway. Because we're just slamming down a Manticore. Bane of my existence has returned. And this matchup just got much scarier. This turn was actually pretty interesting because we did have an option of Swift Spear, Witch's Mark, ditch the land draw to, or ditch the Manticore draw to, or ditch the fight with fire. That seems bad when all their creatures have lifelink. Fight with firing their blocker is going to be incredibly necessary. Okay, now I can really easily Swift Spear. There's just no alternate line, really. Oh my god, let's go. Magical Christmas Land? It's already Christmas time again? They're down to 3. Our opponent is absolutely in the think tank here. They're going through absolutely everything that they can do, thinking over every single line to see if there is any way they are surviving here. They go for a Gurmag Angler for a gigantic life-linking blocker. They're like, in theory, on board, we're not dead because of the life gain, but here is the fight with fire to get us into the final boss of draft number 1. We are 2-1, and this final round decides whether or not we make it to draft number 2. All right, here we are for the final battle. Luckily, we do get to choose to be on the play or the draw. If they have a 1-mana removal spell for Swift Spear, this hand is going to fall flat. But unless they have exactly that, the Swift Spear into Witch's Mark play is going to give us quite a lot of action early. Except that I immediately draw 6th land somehow. I guess it's insanely unlikely, but I could go land. Wow! Well. This is basically half our lands already. The first quarter of the deck. Oh, and then Ordeal on the Trailblazer, so next turn they get to attack and kill Swift Spear. Well, we got a massive land clump out of the way, so there is still a chance this game if we hit almost exclusively spells from this point, but yeah, first draw of the game land, Witch's Mark land, when we kept a 5-lander is brutal. Quite unlikely. But we'll have to see how it plays out from here. It is going to be an aggro mirror. Our opponent's on Boros, and they had an excellent start for the aggro mirror. They've got a 3/7, which is going to be impossible for mono red to deal with. And of course, the Ordeal killing one of our creatures. There's Hopeful Eidolon. Luckily, it is not bestowed onto the Trailblazer. If the Eidolon got bestowed onto Trailblazer, we would have negative 100% chance of winning here. Because a 5-power lifelinker that we can never kill would be unstoppable. All right, well, this is going to be a quick round 1 loss. I mean, we just drew miserably. The hand was a little risky, obviously, but I think the Witch's Mark made it reasonable. We just, even with a 5-land start, drew more lands than spells from that, which is just some bad luck. It certainly happens. With our land count, it's highly unlikely, and the Manticore just kills us. 0-1 to start it off. We're going to have to win 2 games in a row here, but luckily we're on the play this time. Well, we were on the play the first time too, but we are going to be advantaged by being on the play here. If we have a solid hand, I think this matchup is reasonable. They're just like a really good Boros deck. Scared the most of the Hopeful Eidolon, but we saw no instance from our opponent. We do need to worry about the Heart Piercer Manticore a little bit. And try to keep our life total high enough to not die to that. Ardenvale Tactician does have the 2-mana instant tap 2 creatures thing. So we should be concerned about that as well. But yeah, that was a very unfortunate game 1. It basically wasn't a game with all the lands. Maybe we just run it back here. I don't even think they have a high enough like non-creature count that Berserker is going to be the craziest thing to side in. We saw 1 non-creature, 2 non-creature spells technically, because we saw Ordeal and then an Adventure on Ardenvale Tactician. Maybe the odds of getting to 6 mana are going to be a lot lower in this matchup. So we ditch a 6-drop, keep the curve even lower. But this being able to like wipe their board is pretty good if they don't have exactly the really sturdy 0-4 that keeps getting counters on it. Yeah, I'm gonna run it back here. Five lander into the one lander. This is going to be a forced mulligan. Okay. If Frostburn Weird gets killed, it's pretty over. Dragon Mantle on Frostburn Weird is pretty bad. But Witch's Mark on Frostburn Weird is pretty excellent. Just discard the extra Witch's Mark. I think against Heroic, we just keep killing their only targets for potential abilities. Cool. They could have an Ardenvale Tactician in hand here, out of the cards that we know about, if they have an instant. But I think they would have just cast that, so that wouldn't make sense. Okay, there's a Syndicate Messenger. Does not block particularly well here. So we send in the squad. Probably Boulder Rush and slam down the Rimrock Knight here. They're down to 8. Gonna have 3 4-power creatures on board. If we activate this Witch's Mark on our Rimrock Knight. Actually not unbeatable for us. Now I want to Witch's Mark the Scytheclaw Raptor, and we're still kind of okay. Attacks are still pretty excellent, yeah. Heartpiercer Manticore is going to be quite the finisher. Chump that. Let's make this 3 damage. Well, Manticore, the face is already lethal even if it's 2. We put them to 6. We Manticore the Raptor at their face, it deals 5, and the Witch's Roll deals 1. So it is already lethal. The Manticore, that is. So we'll play Crusader. No longer lethal if they attack. Or if they have the fall of the hammer or whatever. They have to do it at sorcery speed though, because of Sideclaw Raptor's ability to shoot them for 4. Alright, they attack, so it's no longer lethal. But if I send in the whole team and then Manticore, I can probably find lethal. Let's see. Okay, definitely. If they're at 3 life. Stress Incarnate here. Absolutely down to the wire. The literal last game of Magic possible here. Game ended on like 4 mana. I want to cut this Chandra in a land. Because we're on the draw as well. Makes us more likely to draw land. I still feel like that's just because of how these two games specifically played out. I think they can still go long. I don't know. They seem low on removal, right? No removal spells. We saw 0 removal spells that game or the first game. I guess it's pretty unlikely to go long then. It's like either they steamroll us or we steamroll them. So I'm gonna cut land Chandra here. Put in some steamrollers. I don't really have steamrollers. I can just up the creature count. The early play count. Another Dragon Mantle Crusader. Witch's Mark has just been consistently incredibly impressive. Do another Witch's Mark over another Dragon Mantle. 16 creatures. All right. Final game of Magic for today. We took this absolutely down to the wire to keep us all guessing whether or not we're making it to game 2, and this is the game that decides it all. How do I draw an opener like this with 14 lands? God, that's going to be 3 rough opening hands, all 3 games of our final round. Arena just making this as stressful as possible. I think I have to mulligan this one. This is worse than the hand we kept in game 1, and we got completely demolished game 1. If we draw anywhere near as bad as we drew in game 1, there is no chance in a million worlds we win this game. Because we don't even have the 1-drop creature to put the Wicked Roll onto with Witch's Mark. It's literally just Witch's Mark and Pray for gas. I can't keep this. I just can't. All right. If I flood, I Witch's Mark one of the lands, so we make sure we have all the lands we need to get Scytheclaw Raptor. To double Scytheclaw Raptor. Rimrock Knight. I was tempted to Boulder Rush their Rimrock Knight because it would be really funny, but it would be objectively very wrong to do that because we could draw another 2-mana creature we would rather play. Like our 3/2 trample kind of thing. Well, if I don't draw removal, I could lose this game really fast to Ghostblade Eidolon with any kind of trick. So do I Witch's Mark immediately here? It's also the only way I get to attack this turn is by Witch's Marking. But then I have no blockers up as well. But if I try to block a double striker out of a Boros deck, like Raptor's just going to die without even trading anyway. This is risky, but I've got triple 1-mana removal in this deck to draw into. It gets us quite a bit closer, gets us an actual attack this turn, where even if I play the Raptor, I can't really afford to go for any blocks regardless. So we're 2 cards closer to all of our 1-mana 2-damage spells, but we need to hit them right now. There's the Swift Reckoning on the Rimrock Knight, fair enough. It can't block anyway, so not the worst to lose that. 10th District Legionnaire's a problem. I need my burn spells, and they are just not here. Next turn we get to play Ranger plus Raptor to dig, if we're still alive. This looks like the combat trick to ruin my life. Anywhere I block, pretty much any combat trick kills my Raptor without them losing a creature. Yeah, no, Martial Glory is an absolute nightmare anywhere I block here. If I blocked Rimrock Knight, I guess I get to actually trade with that at least. It's the only place I maybe do something with this block. But if I blocked Rimrock Knight, I think I just die. Yeah, I would have taken lethal, because they would have done 8 damage with Eidolon and 2 with Legion, and they would have dealt 10. So that was the only block I think I could do without dying. Oh, you're too late, Wild Slash. Well, it's not dead on board. Maybe you're not. So dead to the flyer, though. Because I can't kill that with the Wild Slash. And I can't not block this. Yeah, no, it's just too late. This is tragic. They have absolutely nothing. That's about my only hope. Slightly outrace them if this Raptor gets in. And then I have the Frostburn Weird blocker up and Wild Slash the Eidolon. And then draw into something else as well. That's huge. That has huge potential, depending on their draw here. Because now I get to Wild Slash their only flyer. They need a combat trick to kill me out of those 2 cards. Or removal. And it's the removal. Well, I genuinely think I did about all I could in these games. I do not recall any major misplays or punts at all. So close. Completely down to the wire on this one. Yeah, always feels rough, but I mean, looking back on the draft and the gameplay, I feel like we ended up with a very, very powerful deck, so I'm pretty happy with how I drafted. And when it comes to the gameplay, I'm not recalling any specific misplays or punts or anything really. I think I did about everything in my power to try to make it to day 2, and you just can't always get there. This final battle here was, I think, a very reasonable matchup for us, but we clumped together all of our mulligans into just one final round here, and it was pretty devastating. The one big thing I think that we could have done differently was maybe mulliganing in that game 1, but I was trying to think statistically speaking, with the fact that we'd already drawn 5 lands, we only had 15 in the deck. We had 2 draw steps and 2 draws from Witcher's Mark to try to draw more creatures, and we just drew so many lands so slowly there. But that was like the one real play we could have done differently. It was just like mulligan decisions here. And even had we done that mulligan decision correctly, that would have meant all 3 games of the final round we get to start a card behind because we had the mulligan every single game. Arena was just not interested in us getting the day 2 today, and it happens. So another look at the deck. Again, as I said before, I'm pretty happy with this deck. I am pretty happy with how we played. I just don't think we could quite make it there today with some of our draws. Played against some very, very strong decks and very strong opponents, as you can expect during these Arena Open events. Got really, really close, but yeah, Whip of Erebos solos our deck as it did in round 1, and in that final round, again, we had to mulligan every game and just never had a considerably great hand to start things off with. Just Just not the draws we were looking for. So 2 and 2 it is, all the way down to the wire, but at the very last moment, we get kicked out of the event here at day 2, draft number 1, with 2,500 gems. Feels pretty bad in the moment, but if we look back on day 1, we made it through on our very first try, so we are still up in value over the weekend. I think we got to play with some excellent decks. We opened up a great sealed deck. We drafted a fantastic mono red deck, so we had some nice fun gameplay as well. All in all, a pretty great weekend, even if we didn't make it to day 2, draft number 2. It is just going to feel bad in the moment, of course. It is that human element of like, oh, so close. But it is what it is. Still a solid weekend here. 2,500 gems up on the event. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed watching and you're interested in seeing some more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.